Total Screen proudly presents the Weekly Set Podcast with Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Episode 226, recorded October 12th, 2019. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of the Total Screen. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at the Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So, today, Will, we are beginning our 10th season of the Weekly Set podcast.
Woo!
Last week we did our 225th episode. That was the end of season 9. Basically, I've made every 25 episodes a season, just to keep it easy.
I didn't realize we were keeping track of seasons, or that this was like a season thing.
I use it just to divide up where we are, just every 25 episodes.
Okay, every 25 episodes is a season.
Yep, just to keep it easy. Now, those of you who have been with our show before, yes, we are going to talk about Mr. Robot, just not on tonight's podcast. So we're catching up because of like the location we had for our 225th podcast, like where it fell with shows coming back and stuff. We had to delay going into the Good Place discussion, and now we have, because we have so many Good Place episodes to talk about to catch up on that, we're delaying going into Mr. Robot. So next week we'll talk about Mr. Robot and the Good Place, and that'll be from that point on until both of those seasons end. Both of those series end, because it's the final seasons.
Yeah, they're final season for both.
Yeah, we'll be talking about both of those shows week to week. But right now we're going to be talking about the first 3 episodes of The Good Place, the ones that have aired already, which are A Girl from Arizona Parts 1 and 2, and Chillaxing. So those are the 3 episodes we're going to be discussing. And then, like I said, next week we'll get into like Mr. Robot and stuff like that. We'll be doing both of those. One double duty. But for now, it is just The Good Place. So, yeah, it's good to have The Good Place back. I've heard some complaints, and I think they're fairly justified, that, like, it feels like a lot of recap in, like, the first, 2 episodes, really.
Yeah.
I mean, this feels kind of like just what The Good Place does, you know? It takes a while to get started into the season, and then it, starts hitting really good. And even when it's, kind of recap-y and not a lot's happening, there's still lots of, funny jokes.
Yeah, there's still a lot of good zingers. I especially like The Bad Place, their pep song.
1877 Cars for Kids.
KARS, Cars for Kids.
Which is funny because even before this episode aired, I used to always, every time that commercial would come on, I'd be like, oh, this is the worst song ever. It's like a device of hell. It's infernal. I used to say all sorts of stuff about that song. I hated it so much. And now it's now it makes sense.
It actually is a device of hell. Confirmed.
So basically, to catch up on what was happening in last season and why I say it's a lot of recap is basically last season ended with them deciding that they're going to get 4 new test subjects to do a simulated Good Place to see if humanity can change for the better. And these test subjects, they can't be too evil, they can't give them Charles Manson and a bunch of serial killers and stuff. Can't give them Adolf Hitler. It has to be people that are bad in the same way that the original 4 were bad. And they have to be able to turn them good without telling them that their souls depend on it. That, the souls of humanity depend on it.
Without letting them in on it. Because their argument was, Chidi, Eleanor, Tani, and Jason turned good. Jason's debatable. But anyway,
I think Jason was always good. He was just, stupid.
Yeah, Jason's debatable. But they turned good, but The Bad Place argues that was a fluke. And so the whole point of this is that they're going to do it again to prove that it's not just a fluke and that people can genuinely improve.
So we know from last season we saw, I think we only saw one of them from last season, which was John Wheaton. He's the first test subject that was summoned. He's this gossip columnist who turns out to have been...
Technically, no. Technically, we saw 2 of them last season.
Okay, well, actually, I think technically we saw 3 of them.
Because we saw Simone and John last season.
Yeah, so Simone is, we've already seen her before. She's Chidi's girlfriend from when they had their kind of second go on Earth, when they tried that experiment last season.
Yeah, when they had their second lives on Earth, where they basically, redid it so that they didn't die, when they originally died. And so they ended up having, different lives on Earth because of that. And Chidi ended up, Simone ended up being Chidi's girlfriend. And this caused problems at the end of last season because when Simone became part of this experiment, unexpectedly, Chidi basically decided that, Chidi couldn't function around her.
Yeah.
So Chidi decided he needed to have his memories of everything completely wiped and reset back to a blank slate so that his relationship with Simone wouldn't interfere with the experiment.
Yes, that's why I said after you said that we saw 2 of them, I was like, well,
yes.
Actually, technically we've seen 3 because
technically we saw 3, yes, but that was a bigger fish to fry. So we had to get
Chidi's memory wiped, he becomes another one of them.
Right.
That doesn't officially happen until later in the first episode of the season. But we also met John Wheaton, who's a gossip columnist who happened to actually be somebody that focused on Tahani.
Yeah.
And was very cruel to Tahani. Basically just followed her around and mocked her constantly.
Yeah. Constantly. They basically figured out, with Simone and John, they basically figured out that the bad place was specifically picking people to mess with them.
Yes. And so they had this gossip columnist. They had Chidi's former girlfriend, as people that would just mess with the people administering this test. So in this episode, in the first episode of this season, we get to meet the other 2, which are Brent Norwalk, who wants to go to the best place. He's just like a scummy elitist, basically.
He's basically Mr. White Privilege to the max. Yeah.
Yeah. Just thinks he's better than everybody.
He's a rich old white dude, who thinks like he's better than everybody and he deserves like everything handed to him on a silver platter.
Yeah, so if John was meant to fuck with Tahani and Simone was meant to fuck with Chidi, Brent was kind of meant to fuck with Eleanor, basically.
Yes, in a way. Yes. Because he really gets under Eleanor's skin.
And the third one, which I don't even really think affects that last person, I think that probably the bad place, I bet the internal logic was that they couldn't find somebody to fuck with Jason, because he's too stupid to think too rationally about it.
He's too stupid. Basically it's Linda. She is an old woman who
just is completely uninterested in everything.
Yeah, has no personality and isn't interested in anything to an infuriating degree.
Yeah.
To a point where you just want to explode.
Yeah, they had Eleanor even had Janet create, you'd brought this up before, this baby elephant of pure light.
Yes.
That tells secrets of the universe.
It appears and then immediately it's Shirley Temple killed JFK.
Stonehenge was a sex thing.
Yeah.
So it's just it's hilarious, but she's just completely uninterested. And then she's like, "Can she give me a peppermint?"
Yeah. And so basically these are the thing, and their mission is to get these people to improve. And so the first person they decide to focus on is Linda, the boring, unemotional, because the fact that she doesn't show any interest or any emotion drives Eleanor to the point where that's the first nut she has to crack.
Yeah.
So that's what they attempt to do. And like you said, they attempted to do it with the baby elephant. It gets to a point where they're at the point where everybody's flying for the first time.
And she's just hovering around, not caring.
She's just hovering, not caring. And Eleanor and Michael confront her, and then basically Eleanor won't let it go. And then finally she punches Eleanor in the face, flies up, starts kicking the shit out of people in the air. And then that's
picks one of them up and swings him around and throws him into a wall. It's
it's one of the best parts of the episode because it's so out of nowhere.
She just goes berserk, yeah.
She just goes berserk. And then we find out it's really Chris from the bad place.
Yeah, Chris is the demon from the bad place that's always ripped. It was I think it was in season 2, they had the part where...
Yeah, it was the part where Michael was trying to constantly reboot it and find the version of the bad place where he finally got one over on Eleanor, and his big idea for one of the reboots was that he wasn't going to pair Eleanor with Chidi. So he was gonna find so he found a bad place demon to pair her with, and it was Chris.
Yeah, and he's just ripped.
And he's constantly just taking off his shirt and, like, showing it off.
Yeah, just constantly taking his shirt off. And so we find out that he was disguised as Linda.
It's funny because when they pull off the disguise, like, he's shirtless and stuff. and he's just shirtless. Like, and then they ask, what happened to your shirt? He's like, oh, it must have came off with the disguise.
He's just always shirtless, yeah. So then they confront about that. They contact the judge, and there's like a big conference call with Michael and Sean, the head of the bad place, and Judge Jen, short for Hydrogen, who's the judge of it, and the judge kind of admonishes Sean for the dirty trick, and they end up agreeing that the next contestant, or the next, I guess, test subject, would be Chidi himself, since his mind was already wiped anyways.
Right, since Chidi doesn't know what's going on, he's perfect. Of course, Sean heavily objects that because Sean says, "Oh, that's BS because Chidi has already been proven that he could improve," you know, and then Sean likens it to that's like studying for a test and then acing it.
Yeah, I love Sean in the bad place, and just like everything has to be unfair, and doesn't like just objects to something if it's not unfair.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, the first two episodes of it are the two-parter, The Girl from Arizona, are really kind of about Eleanor and Chidi, and Eleanor in particular dealing with Chidi not knowing who she is.
Yeah.
And eventually Eleanor coming to the decision that she has to encourage Chidi to basically meet.
Well, because after Linda is proven to be a fake, is proven to be Chris, Eleanor then turns her attention immediately to Simone, because Simone is walking around basically going, oh, this is all like a trick my brain is playing on me. I'm not really dead. The good place doesn't really exist. I could just do whatever I want with no consequences. Like, so she's kind of like doing things like pushing people in the pools and stuff because she's got this
nothing
attitude.
Too bad, just like kind of very like
mischievous.
Yeah.
You know, because she's got this attitude that nothing's real and it doesn't matter. And Eleanor doesn't want to do this. Now, Eleanor doesn't want to do this, but as she's like talking to Michael about what she's going to do with Simone, Michael suggests that, you know, she has Chidi talk to Simone. And Eleanor resists at first because, you know, that gets her like really jealous, you know, like, because, you know, Chidi and Simone had that relationship before. I think Eleanor is afraid that relationship might get rekindled. But Eleanor kind of relents because she realizes, well, she's like, well, I'm not doing anything with him, so why not? You know.
Yeah. So, and she lets him go. She's still struggling with it. It's emotional for her. She's had trouble. Right. She did the right thing for the sake of mankind, basically.
Yeah, for the sake of mankind.
And that's where the episode gets its title from, is that after she does that, she kind of like her friends kind of almost kick her out of a leadership position, basically. They're like worried about her not doing it. And she kind of takes off because she's upset.
This is one where like Jason has like some of the best material in this episode, because like there's a point where Michael stops Jason to have a talk with him. And then, like, finally, like, he has, like, a realization talking to Michael where Jason is just like, oh, so you're saying, like, when I think of something, I shouldn't just do it just because I want to do it. Like, and then Michael's like, yeah. And then Jason's like, well, why didn't anybody tell me that before? And then Michael's just like, many people have, mostly judges.
But then there is so basically, after she gets kind of admonished by her peers, and they're like...
Oh, yeah, and Jason has, like, another good line during that, too, when, like, she's getting admonished, and then Jason pops up, and Jason's like, I wouldn't be a good architect either. Like, I wouldn't be, or nobody would want me in charge. And then Michael points to Jason and says, that's a good point.
But anyways, Eleanor kind of like leaves in the house. She's like, well, fine, then you guys take care of it. And she's kind of like having her little pity party. She's sad about what happened with Chidi, and she's just feeling like so much pressure from doing it. And Michael comes back and finds her and talks to her. And when explaining how this is so hard for her and she can't do it, she's like, I'm just a girl from Arizona.
Right.
And so that's where that episode title comes from. And yeah, that was a great part there too, where Michael calls her like the pride of Arizona. And she's like, actually, the pride of Arizona is a statue of Alice Cooper made out of cigarette butts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of like the first 2 episodes is mostly like focused on that. After that, it kind of starts getting more on track, like with the 3rd episode, about, trying to correct the behaviors of these, the test subject. I mean, that kind of is going through the first 2 as well, but it really kind of, the focus kind of comes back, like the first 2.
I think the 2nd episode also like has like a heavy focus on Brett.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Brett he's great because he's this guy like super privileged. It's funny too because after Eleanor pairs Simone up with Chidi, she decides, okay, now she's going to focus on Brett. And Brett is just insufferable. And he drives Eleanor crazy. Because, like, they're doing, like, all these things. Michael decides, like, they're going to do the thing that they did to Eleanor, which is basically, like...
Make him think he's in the wrong place.
Make him think he's in the wrong place by having, like, these catastrophes happen, featuring things, like, related to him,
Yeah.
The same thing, like giant, like, golf balls, or, like, bouncing around and crushing cars and stuff.
A lot of callbacks to the early parts of season 1.
Yeah, there's a lot of callbacks to the early parts of season 1.
Even the suits, the
the suits they're wearing. Yeah, the beat suits. And they rush out and they're like, oh no, we don't know what's going on. This is terrible. And then Brent's like, no, I know what's going on. This is all because of me. And they're
I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah, this is all because of me. I'm in the wrong place. They think like he's getting it, and then he's like, I don't belong in the good place. I belong in the best place. That means there's a place better than this, and I belong in it.
Brett's also insufferable because he's just using Janet as like a secretary.
Yeah, he thinks Janet is just his personal secretary.
And he's upset with Janet because she won't wear the clothes he makes her make for him.
Yes.
He's just the worst. And it's like in a hilarious way.
And there's this one part where like Eleanor has like this fake like game show or something happening with Brett, and like there's one point where like Brett answers like, what one of my personal heroes, Martin Luther King Jr. once said, when life knocks you on your ass, you just gotta get up and start throwing haymakers. And then Eleanor is like, he never said that. And then he just responds with, yes, he did, you're wrong.
I love also, like, they tried to get Chidi to be teaching ethics again. And They tried to get him to go to the class, but it didn't work out because he showed up and said, I should be the professor. I went to Yale. Did you know I went to Yale?
Well, no, it's funny because, like, he showed up and he was like, he took an ethics class at Yale and got a B+. And then he said he should be the professor.
And then he asked Chidi again if he knew that he went to Yale.
Yes.
After just telling him he was at Yale.
That character's a riot. Oh god.
So he's funny but like insufferable and problematic for them. But they're basically, the best they can do with him right now is kind of just distract him.
Right, yeah.
They're like, yes, you are supposed to go to the best place, and trying to kind of like convince him of that. As we mentioned,
that's the solution they come up with for him in the meantime, is like they decide that like after he brings up the idea of the best place, they decide to kind of trick him and play along with it and be like, yes, there actually is a best place. Don't tell anybody. Not a lot of people know about this, but only the cream of the crop can get in. Like, this is Diamond Club.
Yeah.
And then he says something like, oh, I was a member of the Diamond Club on Earth. And then they're like, perfect.
Yeah, so they're using that distraction to, and I'm sure that's going to run into a problem because he's doing good now in order to get recognized so he can get into the best place, and so they're doing that to distract him, but he's not actually changing as a person. So that's eventually they're going to have to address that.
Eventually they're going to have to address that. Yeah, because if like they've already established if you're doing good things for like some sort of personal gain, it doesn't count.
Yeah. And we already mentioned what's happening with Simone, but to go a little bit further, they're really trying to push Simone and Chidi getting together so that he can kind of help her get out of this cycle of thinking that everything else is fake. And he kind of does that with like having a few moments of conversation with her in which he encourages her to believe he's real.
Leading into episode 3, they unexpectedly run into a snag with Chidi.
Yeah.
Because they see Chidi and he's all like in relaxation gear, you know, like headed to like the beach or something. And Eleanor is like, hey, how's the ethics classes going? And he's just like, oh, you know, like whatever. She says, this is the afterlife. You know, I did that my whole life, so now I'm just ready to chillax.
I love how Michael says that he came up with the term chillaxing.
Yeah.
But that it's a shortening of Chidi and relaxing, not, not chilling and relaxing.
Yeah, she's relaxing. And then it's funny because after Chidi like Michael's like, it's like Chidi is chillaxing, which is a combination of Chidi and relax that I just came up with.
But the way they figure out what to do with Chidi is, and it's like a partial way because it doesn't work completely how they intended it to, but it's that they realize that Eleanor facing a moral conundrum is what convinced or what helped Chidi change as well, because he ended up having to take on the role that he took on with her. And so they're like, okay, we need somebody to take on that role. And obviously Simone isn't going to take on that role because she's confused about whether she should be there or not, but in essence she's not like a bad person, whereas like Eleanor at the beginning of the season 1 was kind of a dirtbag.
Yeah.
Who needed to kind of understand ethics because she just had no understanding of it at all.
Right.
So the solution that they come up with is to basically repeat what ended up happening with Jason and Eleanor. Where like Eleanor got like that letter in season 1 that said like, I know you don't belong here or something. And then she was all freaked out about it. But then when she met up, it was Jason. And that's when he broke character and revealed he wasn't this monk that, you know, was calm and everything. He was actually Jason. It's like,
right. And so they recruit Jason. They recruit Jason, and their idea is to have Jason reveal himself to Chidi. Basically, they're trying to create a moral conundrum for Chidi, where like they ask Chidi to like help Jason or John Yu.
Yeah.
John Yu. And basically immediately like Jason breaks character to Chidi as soon as they're gone. And now Chidi has to deal with Jason, but like he can't let like anybody else know that Jason is Jason and not John Yu.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to like keep that secret, but Jason's like making it super hard. Like I love it like when Michael and Eleanor come around to check on him the first time, and Jason has like the whole place trashed, and Eleanor is like, "Oh, did you redecorate?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, you know, it was decorated one way before, and now it's decorated another way." And then at the one thing where like they're throwing stones into the fire to get like the one thing they've always wished for, and Jason's like, "Oh, let me do it," and she's like, no, we cannot like have you revealing like your true desire and revealing yourself. He's like, "Oh, come on, you know." Jason's like, "My true desire is a motorcycle with picture of Pamela Anderson spray painted on it." And he's like, wait, you have a motorcycle with Pamela Anderson's face? And he's like, "No, not her face." And then she's trying to stop him. Jason's like, "I'm going to do it." And Jason throws the stone, and then the motorcycle appears, and then Michael is just like, "Okay, it's a sexually explicit motorcycle. Who threw that stone?" And then she has to come out. She's like, I did. That was me. That's my greatest desire."
Yeah. So that's basically Chidi babysitting Jason as like the test to kind of help him out. But without Eleanor there, who he ended up kind of developing feelings for and who they had this kind of relationship with that went along with Jason, without kind of Eleanor as a compadre or no, somebody to relate to talk to Jay about what's going on with Jason with, it's just stress for Chidi. It's nothing else.
Yeah, it's just stress. And also Eleanor admits that like her reasons for doing this aren't exactly pure. Like she's getting some satisfaction out of like torturing Chidi in this way because she's mad at him for erasing his memories and basically leaving her.
Yeah.
So she's still dealing with those issues, and this is another manifest of that.
But it's funny because Chidi, like when he confronted Eleanor and Michael about feeling like he was being tortured, Eleanor like just broke down into tears.
Yeah, Eleanor just
like
broke
she was
down
like
into
so
tears.
freaked out about it, about her own behavior, and about like that's the last thing
She just freaked out
to
about like everything, and she just breaks down. And since Chidi has no clue what's going on,
she's like, "Did I just break God?"
Yeah, no, he's like, "Did I just make God cry?"
He's like, "Oh God, my stomach."
Oh God, my stomach ache's coming back. I just made God cry, and I have no clue why. It's great. And this is also the episode where we finally, like, we also get more into John. Like, Tahani takes it on herself to try and steer John and make him a better person since they decided, since John was, like, so obsessed with Tahani in life, that Tahani decides that this is going to be her project.
Yeah, so basically she starts off like, I'm going to take him for like a spa day, I'm going to spoil him, I'm going to give him, as a reporter, a gossip reporter following her around, all the things that she figured he was jealous of her about. And like, I'm going to give it to him all.
She kind of comes to a conclusion that he was the way he was in life because he was jealous that he wasn't part of that celebrity in crowd, and he wrote all that stuff out of pure jealousy. Or that's Tahani's working theory. So she decides that if she lets him in, then he's going to be more, willing to grow and become a better person.
So, I mean, it seems like it's initially working, because it's like, they're immediately like, it's like they're striking up a friendship, and they're enjoying it, and they're having fun, and they're doing the spa day, and there's no animosity, like, really between them, and things are kind of working out like that, but
then she
Tahani
suggests
has to, like, try to get him to use it as a push to make him better himself.
Right, well, yeah, like, after they have that, like, Tahani then suggests, like, and she tries to make it sound like this cool thing that, like, all the celebrities do. So she kind of plays it off. She's like, oh, there's like, this cool thing that we all do where, like, we go to Professor Chidi Aniganye's moral philosophy class, and we learn about philosophy. It's, like, super hip. And then he's like, and then immediately John is like, ew, oh, I'm sorry, like, spend time in a philosophy class? No, thank you, pass.
And so when Tahani tries to apply even more pressure on about it, he basically flips out on her and says, like, you don't know my life. Like, you're telling me I need to be a better person. Like, I worked 16-hour days, trying to amass my followers and do that while you just rode in the lap of luxury and had everything you wanted. So,
right. He's like, I had to live in the real world.
Yeah. So Tahani is like struggling with that now. She's like, how do I get through to him? I thought like, by focusing on this, he could cleanse himself of all his jealousies, but it's not working. And she comes to the realization that, well, she's the same as him. Like, she has the same jealousies and resentments, but they were towards her sister, whereas like his were towards like just people like her in general.
Yeah. She's like, oh, he's just a resentful person who has no friends. And then she's like, and I am a resentful person with no real friends. She comes to that realization that she's basically the same as him.
Yeah.
And she tells him this, she goes back to him and she tells him this story about how she got access. She was like on this yacht, party, and she got access to super exclusive VIP room that was more VIP than the actual VIP room.
Mm-hmm.
And so she got access to this this, and when she went into the room, she was the only person there. And she sat in that room the entire party and talked to nobody because the status of being in, like, the most elite, like, room on the yacht was, like, more important than, like, interacting with actual humans.
Yeah. So she relates the story to him. They get off on a better start, and he seems to be, of all the people, showing the most progress though.
Right.
Because he apologizes to her about the way he covered her in the press and stuff, and they seem to be coming to an understanding, and he's seems to be the furthest along at this point.
Yeah, he seems to be the furthest along at this point.
Besides, perhaps Chidi, who's, or
besides Chidi, who seems to have regressed, and I don't know if Eleanor's experiment with Jason, like, helped much, because it seemed to have just really stressed him out now. So, yeah. And also he thinks he made God cry, so that's not good.
But that's pretty much it. Those are like the main kind of story beats we've hit so far. A lot of it is kind of like, as I mentioned, like the first 2 episodes have a lot of recapping of it, but a lot of it's also kind of playing on old beats that they've hit before. Like we'd mentioned some of the ideas they have, like trying to do the you're in the wrong place and it's causing everything to fall apart thing. Like with them trying to do that.
Yes.
With Brent again, like they had done with Eleanor before. They're playing on the old hits, but they're doing it kind of in a new way. So it's still kind of interesting. We haven't really gotten like a really good twist yet, although episode 3 ends with like a mysterious hooded figure.
Well, hold up. You're getting ahead of yourself a little bit. Because episode 3 ends with basically Eleanor and the group deciding that they're making good progress on all 4 of their subjects, and that things are finally headed in the right direction, and that nothing's going to stop them now. And then as soon as they say that, we cut to this mysterious hooded figure making its way towards the good place.
Yeah, is on one of those like hand crank like train track car things.
Yes.
Where you pump it up and down, and
I can't think of what that was
see it in cartoons
called.
more than anything else. It's a common thing in Looney Tunes cartoons that you see. But he's pumping that thing and going down the train tracks, and it just zooms down the train tracks until you see the train station at the good place. So this figure is headed towards the good place, or this iteration of the good place. And so it's a hint of trouble ahead. We don't really know what it is yet. That's the ending.
Right. I mean, it comes after, like, a triumphant declaration of how things are on track and can't go possibly wrong, so...
Yeah. So we'll have to see what that is and what twist awaits. The thing about the good places, they always have some interesting twists.
Yes,
that kind of turns things on its head or makes you think about things in a different way. So it'll be interesting to see what's coming.
It'll be interesting to see because, like, I'm 100% that whatever this is, it's not what you think it is.
Yeah, that's usually what it is,
Yeah.
Although, like I mentioned, this season has been calling back on a lot of things that we've already seen. Right. So if we really looked at stuff that happened in the early seasons, like season 1, we might be able to figure out.
Well, it's callbacks, but like there's a twist to it. Like the whole Brent thing was a callback to season 1, but then there's the twist where he didn't get convinced that he belonged in the bad place. He got convinced he belonged in the best place. Where Eleanor was convinced that she actually belonged in the bad place.
Yeah.
So there's I guess like the twist that you're referring to that this could be a callback to would be when the one comedian showed up and they turned out to be demons. In season 1 or season 2?
Are you talking about Trevor?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they showed up and they were supposed to be from the bad place, even though they were just from a different bad place.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were supposed to be bad place demons.
Where they brought the fake Eleanor.
Yep. They're supposed to be, yeah, that's right. They were supposed to be bad place demons. And then, like, it turned out that at the end of the season, it turned out that the place was the bad place the entire time. So they weren't really from the bad place. They were there the whole time. They were from there. But anyway.
Well, the bad place is in your heart. It's been in your heart all along.
The bad place is the friends we made along the way.
Yeah. That's it. That's the ultimate cliche, like philosophical lesson from a TV show.
Yes.
That's the good place. Is there anything else we really want to do again? There's lots of like little funny jokes here and there.
There's like a lot of jokes, but I mean, we could be here like all day if we like reference like every joke, every callback.
One thing I want to do though is that, and we talked about this last week, just not on the podcast. Like Tahani, they did a great misdirect with one of Tahani's like celebrity references, where she was like, who was she talking to? Where she was saying, you know, like, she was talking to Jason about like, when I get really sad, I listen to Alanis Morissette, and then you're like, oh yeah, at her house at a party or something, and it's
right.
And then she's like, oh no, not like that, like I just listen to her CDs,
right,
at my friend's house.
The way they swerved that, that was brilliant. It shows that it just shows you how on top
at my friend Adele's house.
It just shows you how on top of the writing they are, where like they can mock themselves and like kind of like throw that curveball, like. Yeah,
it's like a little it's a swerve. Like it takes you off of the route you're thinking it is, and then it takes you right back on it.
It takes you like a less clever show wouldn't do that. But yeah, it's great.
But that's it. So next week, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about Mr. Robot. We'll be talking about the first 2 episodes of season 4. 1 episode's aired so far, but we'll be watching the next one before we do the next podcast.
Look forward to that.
And we'll also be continuing our discussion of The Good Place, but just 1 episode because we're caught up now.
Yeah.
So we'll be like talking about Mr. Robot and The Good Place.
And then after next week, it'll be 1 episode of Mr. Robot and 1 episode of The Good Place.
Yes, we'll just be caught up with that.
We'll be caught up on both.
Yeah. So all that's left is to kind of talk about what's coming up in the week ahead. So recording this on Saturday, October 12th, but on Friday, October 11th, Charmed returned to the CW, Dynasty to the CW. The Are You Afraid of the Dark miniseries came to Nickelodeon, The Birch on Facebook Watch, Little Monsters on Hulu, but most importantly, the El Camino, which is the Breaking Bad movie, came to Netflix. I saw it. My early impression short review is that it's good. It's really good, actually, but it just feels very unnecessary. Like, you don't need it. Like, it doesn't, like, do anything shocking.
Breaking Bad can't be unnecessary.
No, I just mean, when I say unnecessary, I mean, like, there isn't anything, like, shocking or crazy or, like, that changes your perception of things.
It changes everything.
Yeah, there's nothing like that.
This
but
one
it's just
scene
a good...
in El Camino completely changes the ending of Breaking Bad.
No, there's nothing like that at all. It's just a good drama story that follows Jesse after the end of Breaking Bad, and that's it.
Okay.
It's a fun watch if you liked it, but don't feel like oh, this is going to change it or take it in a new direction. No, it doesn't. It's just like a lost episode of Breaking Bad. It's like as if there was an episode that was cut that you never got to see, and this is it. But it's a movie. So that's available on Netflix right now, but it's also in movie theaters, in limited certain theaters, so you can check it out that way as well. Then on Monday, October 14th, Letterkenny returns to Hulu, and Looking for Alaska comes to Hulu. On Tuesday, October 15th, Arrow comes to the CW. I guess it's Arrow's part of the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline they have going right now.
Well, it's Arrow's final season.
Yeah, it's also the beginning of Arrow's final season. That's on the CW. The Purge returns to USA as Treadstone debuts on USA. Same day. Treadstone is like the Bourne Identity. It's like a spin-off of that kind of thing. Wednesday, October 16th, Limetown to Facebook Watch, Impulse Season 2 on YouTube. On Friday, October 18th, The House of Flowers on Netflix, Baby on Netflix, Living with Yourself on Netflix, Looking for Alaska, the miniseries on Hulu. I'd already mentioned that, I guess. I guess one of those is wrong. And Modern Love on Amazon Prime. And then on Sunday, October 20th, 2019, Watchmen returns on HBO. We will be discussing Watchmen, just not right away. We'll discuss it after the season's complete.
Yes.
We have 2 shows that we're actively discussing, and we don't want to throw a third one in. It's just going to be too much. So we'll get to that later, as well as Peaky Blinders, which is currently out. We'll talk about that later as well. We're going to wait till those seasons are over, and we're through this year. So some early next year, in like January or something, we're going to talk about those 2 shows. We'll do a podcast each, one for each show. On Monday, October 21st, Catherine the Great miniseries comes to HBO. On Tuesday, October 22nd, The Misery Index comes to TBS. That's like a lot of people from Impractical Jokers as well as Tahani from The Good Place. It's like a game show with them. So I really don't know too much about it. I've seen previews that really gives me no idea what it really is, but it's like a comedy game show.
Okay, I have no clue.
Then on Wednesday, October 23rd, Castle Rock returns to Hulu for its second season. This one looks like it's heavily inspired by Misery. If you don't know, Castle Rock is like the Stephen King connective tissue series on Hulu. And, so season 2 is going to have like a Misery focus. If you like that book or the characters in it or the movie, it's based on it. It's going to kind of touch on a lot of that stuff. But it's also going to be back in Castle Rock with that town. So, then The Cry, a new miniseries, comes to Sundance on October 23rd as well. On Thursday, October 24th, Daybreak comes to Netflix. And on Friday, October 5th, The Kaminsky Method returns to Netflix for, I believe it's its second season. So that's it. As I mentioned, Mr. Robot and The Good Place next week. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at FoxoHero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Podcast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Night.
Night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very